Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today we're going to be doing another indie horror spotlight. I have with us today, he's a director, and he has a movie that's out right now on the film festival circuit, and it's called The Activated Man. I have with us Nicholas Genie. Nicholas, welcome to the Horror Room.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure. So I've been seeing a lot of buzz about The Activated Man. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, in a nutshell, it's basically about a guy who loses his dog to cancer, and this dog was like a son to him. So it was a very strong bond. And so the trauma of this loss, this intense trauma, essentially bursts open his third eye, and he starts seeing things on the other side. But he is under the assumption that he's basically losing his mind. So as the story unfolds, he basically is wrestling with this. With the idea that, is this real or is this in my mind, as he is forced to confront what he is destined to become.
That's an interesting story. So what gave you the inspiration to come up with it?
It's a little personal, actually. I lost my dog to cancer, and my dog was like a son to me. And that happened right, before COVID hit. And so I was basically left with my grief and locked in my apartment here in Santa Monica. And I just started developing this crazy story, springboarding off of this, this trauma that I went through as well.
And I mean, it's a story that hits at home because, all of us who have pets our pets are like our kids, and we can bond with them. And the time when we do lose loss, I mean, it's something we go through the grieving motions just like we do with a human being.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I find that there are a lot of people out there like me who will see their animals as almost like children or part of the family. Mm-hmm. But I do think there are a lot of people that don't relate to that and don't really understand that or haven't experienced that kind of a bond with an animal. And so I felt that it was important in the film to tackle basically both sides of that equation so that, to basically explain to the audience, equate it to them, to like losing a child, to better help an audience that might not connect as strongly with animals, to, accept the story and accept the stakes of what the main character is going through.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had pets who pass away, and it does hurt. It definitely, like I said, when you have that bond, I guess I agree. There's some people who they have pets, but they don't have that bond.
Yeah.
They leave their pets outside and so forth, but they don't have that bond. But like when you have that bond, it is like losing. I can imagine like losing a child.
Yeah, it's I mean, for me it was, and I'm coming off of I've had a lot of loss in my life. I lost my father when I was 12, and I never imagined that there would be a loss that was more intense and more traumatic. And then I lost Louis, and it was like another level, and I think part of the reason for that is that I rescued Louis, at a time where I was feeling a little bit depressed, and he was a badly abused dog, and so we kind of saved each other a little bit. And there were rarely days where I wasn't with him. I'd bring him everywhere. He would even come with me to film festivals and touring around my past movies. And so I think it was that part of it was also this not understanding what life is going to be like now because he's gone, right?
Yeah. Now, was it somewhat therapeutic to make this movie after losing?
It's very therapeutic, but it's also it's also kind of a little bit masochistic. It feels like, because I would be in the editing room bawling my eyes out. I was crying on set during certain scenes when they're talking about the dog, and so it was a very emotional experience, but in a strange way, feeling that that those emotions on set and in post production, and even now when I see the movie, it's like that pain in some way keeps me close to Louis, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so it's like I almost don't want that to go away, because that means that Louis has gone away. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Now you begin production. I mean, putting this movie together after COVID or during COVID.
Yeah, during COVID, I wrote the screenplay, and I think one of the best things about COVID for this film was that it really allowed me time to just sit on the script, keep revising, and I had several incarnations of the story until I finally landed on the one that that we did, and then I also was able to reach out to various people and find investors to bring it to life. And right at the tail end of the pandemic, we got it off the ground.
Nice, nice. Now, how long did it take production wise?
It was very fast, and when I watch the movie and like I get feedback from people, they see the film, and a lot of people are very impressed by how expensive it looks, for how much we shot it for, and the amount of coverage and dynamic cinematography. And I can't, sometimes I think about it, I'm like, I don't know how we pulled that off, because we shot the movie in 15 days, which is extremely short for anyone who doesn't know. And so, but the movie is, it's like it's a 2-hour movie. There's a lot of locations and characters, and so it's very ambitious, a very ambitious movie to begin with. And somehow we pulled it off in 15 days. It was most things basically just had to go right during production.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, they did, but we also shot on a couple of 12K cameras. And so what that allowed for was, like, for example, if we were shooting a conversation scene and like we were running late or about to run, over schedule, and we hadn't gotten like the medium or something like that, we had a wider, I knew that in post I could, with a 12K raw image, I could punch in on that quite a bit and still with our 4K timeline and essentially create new shots if we needed to. So there are quite a few instances where I was able to essentially create new shots with this crazy negative that we shot it on.
Now, were there any parts at any time during the movie that you were like, I don't like this portion of the movie, or I don't like this ending? Did you do any switching at all?
How do you mean by switching?
I mean, was there any point that you edited something out? You were like, you know what? I don't like how that flows. I'm going to take that out, or I'm going to switch it.
There were like a handful of lines that, like, just a very small number, really, that when in the actual flow of the scene, it just it's not that I didn't like it per se, but it just didn't flow in the scene, and so I cut that out. But there are no actual deleted scenes. The script was actually pretty tight, because I had so much time to revise that. That's one of the interesting things about Hollywood is they'll go into production with these these crazy screenplays that have all this extra material, which of course ends up costing so much extra money. Mm-hmm. But with an independent production, it's really important to have that thing as dialed in and as tight as you can get it, because time is money.
Yeah.
And so it was very tight, and we shot basically everything we shot is in the movie, except for maybe a few lines here and there.
Now, as a filmmaker and director, do you have a tight-knit team that you work with pretty much on each project?
Well, actually, what's interesting is that prior to this, I had been making films in the Northwest, in Seattle, where I grew up. After I finished film school at USC, I basically moved back to Seattle and made a few films up there. And I realized, after a few features, that I was basically hitting a ceiling living there. And there was only so far that I could go, and I really needed to be in LA on the ground to be able to connect with people in the industry who could help open doors for me and hopefully take my career to the next level. And since being down here, I've been able to shadow direct a couple episodes on Grey's Anatomy and get to know a lot of really big influential people. And I would have never been able to do that had I stayed in Seattle. So that being said, this was the first movie I shot in LA, and I didn't know anybody. I came down here, moved back down here, end of 2018, December 2018, and then COVID hit very shortly after, and so I hadn't really had time to like get to know local crew or even really local actors, and so I was relying on some of the cast that we put together for recommendations. So what was interesting about the production is I was working with all fresh people that I had never worked with before,
Wow.
but a lot of them had worked together on other projects, and so it was kind of an interesting dynamic because they had this kind of click, and like,
Yeah.
and I was like kind of the outsider who didn't know anybody, and so it was just kind of interesting. I think one of the lessons that I took away from that experience was when I'm entering a situation like that in the future, like let's say in the next film, building a crew, I'm going to focus on finding very talented people who may not already have those big connection groups, so that we all kind of get to know each other and grow together as a crew, right? And I think that's probably the best way, at least for me, to kind of establish a filmmaking family, so to speak.
Yeah. And that's the best way, because I talk to a lot of filmmakers, and having that tight knit group that you go through a project with, where each one of you knows how each other thinks, and this is the way he wants it shot. I think that sounds like it makes the overall film go and the process go smooth.
Yeah. If you have some, like a second hand that you develop with people, certainly, yeah, that would make things a lot smoother for sure. And so in this experience with this crew, I didn't really know anybody, and so it was kind of this little bit of a walking on eggshells kind of experience, because you don't want to obviously offend people or ask. I'm in a tough position because directing an independent movie that's really ambitious like this one, you have to ask a lot of your crew. You have to ask them to work really hard. And we did pretty well overall with like overtime. Like we really didn't have any super crazy overtime days, or a few days here and there where we went over like by 1 or 2 hours. But when you think about like Hollywood and TV schedules, especially, that go over just constantly hours upon hours over schedule, I was actually really proud that we only went over a couple of days, or a couple of hours on a couple of days. But yeah, because you don't really know anyone, there's this new territory thing, and so
you don't know where. Yeah.
So it was a kind of it was so I didn't have that second hand, and I had to be able to be the director and the guy running the show, so to speak, while making sure everyone was comfortable and having a good experience.
What would you say right now, as a filmmaker in the year 2024, that is the biggest struggle that most indie filmmakers are running into?
The biggest struggle that indie filmmakers are, say the last part?
That are running into right now.
Gotcha. I mean, I think that the common answer is financing. A lot of independent filmmakers reach out to me, especially like when we're going around at various film festivals, because I've been very lucky in the sense that I've been able to raise some pretty decent independent budgets. I've kind of danced in the world of like $500K to $1 million to $2 million throughout all the films that I've done. And a lot of independent filmmakers are obviously working really hard to make features for like 50 grand, or like, scraping together wherever they can, saving those paychecks. And so I think one of the biggest struggles for a lot of independent filmmakers is financing, because a lot of filmmakers don't study the business side of the industry. And so it's difficult to connect with investors, and not just connect with them, but sell them on a project when they haven't really studied the industry, the market, market trends, actors and salaries, and who's worth what, and who's in and who's not, and all that kind of stuff that goes into developing a project from the ground up that's both creative and business minded at once. And so I think, honestly, a lot of film schools don't teach that either. Like, I had to really study on my own after film school, or even during film school. And I went to USC, which is,
Yeah.
arguably the best film school on the planet. And they don't teach you how to get a movie made, really there. You can seek out individual courses and piecemeal a kind of a vague understanding, but there's no course really saying, if you want to get a movie made, take this class, right? So I on my own, I studied Box Office Mojo, and like my brain has so many grosses in it, like it's crazy, and actors and who's willing to, like the Nicolas Cages of the world, who are still worth a lot of money but are willing to do those smaller projects, that could help an independent film get off the ground, things like that. So I really studied the industry to help that connection with investors when that opportunity arises.
That's pretty interesting. Now, do you also think I guess that falls into like the whole marketing and the sales aspect as well, because you have to be able to market and sell your movie to investors.
Market and sell the movie to investors, or you mean to the?
I mean, the idea of your movie.
Oh, sure, sure. Well, I would say actually even bigger than that is just the release, the distribution, and the release and the marketing of the film,
Even afterwards,
when it's done, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's so that's a big one. And unfortunately, the reality is that if you're making an independent film and it doesn't have like A-list names in it, like Nicolas Cage, or some really big names that are relevant but willing to do these smaller films, you're going to have a very small window of achieving success. And so if you're an independent film without a huge cast, and you don't get into, let's say, Sundance or one of the major film festivals, where not always, but sometimes these films can explode and cause like a bidding war and all that kind of thing. If you don't have that, let's call it a lottery ticket, right? Finding financial success in the release of the movie is really tough. And so I always, when I'm chatting with independent filmmakers, I always say, unless you have those things, or a distributor that somehow really believes in what you have and is willing to give you a crazy advance and really, really favorable terms, which I would say is probably almost never the case for a movie without that buzz behind it, whether either an A-list name cast buzz or that crazy festival buzz, right?
Yeah.
I would almost suggest that these independent filmmakers release the films themselves, because at the end of the day, most independent distributors will take these films and essentially put them in their catalog, milk them for whatever they can squeeze out of it, and then the independent filmmaker rarely sees any money, right? And so the downside, of course, is that when you release the film yourself using what's called aggregators, there are these companies out there like Quiver and a few other ones that you essentially pay them a couple of grand, like a couple $1,000 or whatever, there's different tiers to release the film. They will put the film out on various platforms, Vudu, iTunes, whatever streaming that is in the tier that you pay for. And then it's on you to market the film but 100% of all revenue comes directly to the filmmakers. So there's no cut. The distributor receives no cut. There's no sales agent taking a cut. And the reason that I also recommend this is because when you're in a situation like I described, without that A-list cast, super A-list cast, right? Not just names, but really A-list, or that festival buzz, 99% of the distributors that are going to pick up your film are not going to put money into really marketing it in a way where people have an awareness of it, right?
Correct.
So most of these indie films, will come out on Tuesday, and if you don't know about it, you're not going to see it on that new release page. It's just going to disappear. And meanwhile, the distributor has, sold it around the world for, a few pennies here and there, made a few bucks. But when the balance sheet comes out, it says, they're still not broken even with the terms of the deal. And so the filmmaker often doesn't see anything. And so oftentimes I've had this experience myself, is when you sign with these distributors that will put your film out there, and you realize that they're not really marketing it, you're spending money to market it yourself anyway.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you're already going to be marketing it yourself, then honestly, dig deep and find that couple extra grand to just avoid giving anyone else a cut, right? I mean, I think that's the smartest thing.
It makes sense,
especially in the new world of streaming and VOD. That's where we are now, right? And so, if you can then control the release yourself, and who knows, maybe it picks up a little steam. You never know.
And this is a question I ask a lot of filmmakers with streaming services like Tubi and Plex, where pretty much, I'm going to say anybody, but it's a lot easier to get your movie out there on a streaming service, and there's no gatekeeper, there's no filter. Do you think that is watering down the actual product of indie horror?
Oh yeah, that's a very good question, and I think it actually stems a little broader than that. I would say that with advances in advances in not only the release landscape but also the technological landscape.
Yes,
you now have a whole slew of filmmakers out there. People probably aren't going to like me saying this, but that probably shouldn't be making movies, right? And so hey, look, if you want to, you have every right. It's your art, it's your work, of course. But what that has done, is now you have so much content, and I don't like that word content, but it's so much content that's just constantly coming out. All these indie horror films and other genres too, these low budget movies that get packaged and tossed out there. And, most of them are really bad, and mine aren't perfect at all. Like I will be the first critic of my own stuff,
yes.
It's in this, we're in this realm of change where anyone can make a movie. I can pick up I can make a movie on my iPhone. It's literally a 4K camera. It's a pretty good camera, and you can get little attachments. And so at the end of the day, you can make a feature film. I mean, if you really pushed for, like almost nothing today.
Mm-hmm.
But again, most of those will not be very good. And so you're flooding the marketplace with a lot of stuff that ends up giving the genre or genres, kind of a bad name, or watered down, as you put it.
Yeah, because I mean, I've heard people say, well, people are going to find the good indie movies on the streaming service.
Yeah.
But as a person who's not a filmmaker, I'm just a horror movie fan, and yeah, there's so much. There's so much shit. I'm gonna say it. I
No,
don't
it's
like
true.
bad mouthing filmmakers, but there's a lot of shit when they're
Yeah.
dead. Is and you can see that they didn't put no effort into making the movie. I don't know if it was a cash grab or what, because I don't know if he was making money, or if it's a clout or a thing to brag about. Hey, I got a movie out there, and there's just so much. I don't even want to call it art because it's just like, and you have to weed through a lot of it before you find something good.
Yeah, and honestly, what makes what makes that even a bigger challenge is that, um, honestly, independent filmmakers have the deck stacked against them in a lot of ways. What's interesting is that we're like programmed to accept crap to some degree from Hollywood from Hollywood movies,
Hmm.
right? We give crap a pass
We do.
often.
Hmm.
I mean, especially now we have like all these movies that are coming out on Netflix,
Netflix
like
have that.
and very, these whatever originals. A lot of them are. It's like, was this a first draft screenplay? Like, what's like no one looked at this,
Yeah.
and so we're programmed to like give those things a pass. But then but when we go and watch an independent film where the filmmakers don't have the resources or the opportunities or the access to make it as big as and as big as bad as possible with all the bells and whistles, we are going into those experiences basically saying, impress me, right? Like literally we sit down, we start watching an independent movie and expect it to suck, right? And it's like we're waiting for it to prove us wrong. And it's very interesting how we're programmed, but it should be the opposite. It should be the opposite, right? And so oftentimes, a lot of independent films that are pretty good will be unfairly treated online. You can look on like just user reviews and on various platforms and things, and it's unfortunate because for whatever let's call them haters, right?
Trolls. Yeah.
Or troll, whatever, will want to pick apart an indie film for whatever reason while they give a pass to whatever Hollywood films. And unfortunately, in those situations where a quality one is getting hurt online by people like that, somebody might pass that film over and never give it a chance and miss, something that's gold, or at least bronze,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of that's another issue with that is that how we're programmed and how that affects how we approach content.
It's. I've in the almost year that I've been doing this channel, I've met some amazing indie horror filmmakers, and I've watched some amazing indie projects. Amazing. Um, Thank God I haven't interviewed anyone that I thought their movie was horrible. Thank God that hasn't happened yet. Um, but but no, like as a person, I do have the taste for a terrible B horror movie, right? I like those every once in a while. And they're
Totally,
fun.
like, yeah, like, there is it's almost a genre in itself, right? Like
Yes,
a movie that's intentionally,
yes, it
like
doesn't take itself serious.
designed that way. There's a difference in my mind with a movie like that than like a movie, let's say like The Room,
Yes,
where it is not intentionally bad
exactly.
and it's really terrible. And I you know, obviously it's you watch clips and whatever, and it's hilarious. But
Hmm.
I I can't actually understand how people go and sit and watch that thing.
It's
Like, it makes so much money at these screenings, but that was a movie where he thought he was making something good,
yes,
and so a lot of these, I would say the quality B movies, trashy B movies are the ones that I prefer, where you can tell that the filmmaker had his tongue firmly in his cheek, and he was
they're having fun. They're having
totally
fun.
saw what he was doing, or they were doing, and Yeah, and I think those are a lot of fun. But when you're sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, beating your head against the wall because you're just like, why?
But
Those are the
even
ones
the ones,
that stress me out, man.
but even the ones where you can see, okay, there's potential there, but they don't have a budget, or
Oh
they're.
sure. Hey,
I love those ones. But
I've had those. There are some of those in my
great.
filmography. You know, like there's an indie action flick that I did called Beta Test, and I would say that you know a lot of the reviews of that movie are like, cool concept, wish you had some more money, and yeah, that's totally a situation like that.
It's just the ones. It's just the ones who. I don't know how to explain it. It seems like they're doing it for some kind of recognition. Why say recognition amongst their friends or their peers? To say, "Hey, I made a movie." You know, it
I
was
like going back to what we said, man. There are a lot of these people probably should not be making films.
yes,
They have the right to, you know, and if
yeah,
they want to, if they want to, they can, you know. But at the end of the day, having a self-awareness enough to know when you should and should not, I think is a luxury, you know, that a lot of people don't have or don't share, you know. So so it leads to a lot of that kind of stuff, unfortunately.
It does. It does. All right, Nicholas, where can everyone find you, my friend?
Also, I'm really bad at the social media thing. I am on Facebook. You know, my name, Nicholas Genie. The Activated Man Facebook page is the Activated Man movie. I would say that's like the best way to follow along with the film and the film festival journey, which is just getting started. And aside from that, you know, just my email. You can find that on IMDb, and you know, let me know what you think of the film, and unless it's a bad review, then don't. Just kidding. But yeah, so that's basically the ways.
Awesome. Well, listen, Nicholas, I'm looking forward to seeing the Activated Man. I've seen posters for quite a bit, and I'm excited to when the finally does come out to take a look at it.
I'm looking forward to your thoughts.
Yes, and everybody keep a lookout for the Activated Man, and take a look at it, and also follow my man Nicholas Genie as well. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Spurs. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.